She ignored every order, failed every test, and slept through the sound of gunfire. Her squad called her a liability. But a legendary Navy SEAL commander knew the one secret phrase that would unleash the most lethal soldier they had ever seen. The air at the crucible tasted of hot metal and scorched sand. Nestled deep in the Nevada desert, the high-tech training center was an anvil where soldiers were either forged into weapons or broken into pieces. Staff Sergeant Aria Thorne stepped off the transport shuttle into the oppressive morning heat, her presence as quiet as a shadow. She was 30, with ash blonde hair pulled back into a severe, tactical braid that fell between her shoulder blades. But it was her eyes that were unsettling, a pale, placid gray that seemed to absorb the harsh sunlight without reflecting any of it back. They were the eyes of someone perpetually watching from a great distance. The admin clerk handed her a key card without looking up. Barracks Delta, Bunk 8. Formation at 0700. Don't be late. The instructors here use stragglers for target practice. Aria navigated the barracks with an unnerving economy of motion. It smelled of sweat, gun oil, and industrial-strength cleaner. She chose the bunk in the far corner, her back to the wall, a clear line of sight to both the main entrance and the emergency exit. It was a habit forged in places where the wrong choice of sleeping arrangements could be permanent. At evening chow, she saw them for the first time. Lieutenant Caleb Vance held court at the center table, his smile charming but never quite reaching his eyes. Flanking him were his loyalists, Jax Rhino Miller, a mountain of muscle who looked like he could bench press the building, Finn Hawk Larson, whose sharp eyes missed nothing, and Leo Chun, who watched Vance with the unwavering adoration of a true believer. Some people get here on merit, Vance said, his voice carrying across the mess hall. Others are charity cases, quotas to fill. His gaze flicked toward Aria's solitary table before dismissing her entirely. She continued eating, her movements precise and unhurried, filing their faces away in a mental folder labeled potential threats. The next day, on the rifle qualification range, the first crack appeared. The targets shimmered like ghosts at 300 meters. Aria's file said she was a master marksman, a surgeon with a rifle. She stepped to the firing line, her form flawless. She raised the weapon, the stock settling into her shoulder as if it were an extension of her own body. Her breathing was controlled, her sight picture perfect. The command to fire echoed down the line, and she did nothing. She held her aim for a full minute, utterly motionless, before lowering the rifle without firing a single round. The instructor, a grizzled sergeant with a jaw tight enough to crack walnuts, stormed over. "Thorne, are you having a problem with your weapon?" "No, Sergeant," she replied, her voice a low monotone. "Then I suggest you use it. This isn't a nature walk." "Yes, Sergeant." On the second and third strings of fire, the result was the same. Perfect form, perfect aim, and a pristine, untouched target. Whispers spread down the firing line like a virus. By the end of the drill, Vance's mocking laugh was the loudest sound on the range. The mystery of Staff Sergeant Thorne had begun. The obstacle course, known as the Grinder, was designed to separate the strong from the merely fit. It was a brutal landscape of high walls, razor wire crawls, and rope climbs that could humble the most arrogant soldier. Aria's squad hit the starting line at a full sprint, the instructor's whistle still echoing in the dry air. Jax powered over the 8-foot wall with a roar, while Finn scaled it with a fluid grace that earned him his call sign. The team was moving fast, a well-oiled machine. Except for one part. Aria approached the wall at a steady, deliberate pace. She stopped, looked up at the top for exactly 3 seconds, and then did the unthinkable. She sat down, cross-legged in the dirt at the base of the wall. She closed her eyes, her hands resting on her knees. "Thorne, what the hell are you doing?" Vance yelled from the other side, his face already turning crimson with fury. "Move! We're on the clock." She didn't respond. Her breathing remained even and steady, as if she were meditating in a quiet temple instead of in the middle of a live-fire training facility. Other squads swarmed around them, their grunts and curses filling the air. Aria's squad was forced to move on without her, their pace now frantic as they tried to make up for the lost time. When they circled back 15 minutes later, caked in sweat and sand, she stood up, brushed off her pants with infuriating calm, and jogged to fall back into formation. She offered no explanation, no apology. That evening, the whispers solidified into a name, Dreamwalker. It followed her everywhere. "Hey, Dreamwalker," Jax grunted as she passed their table in the mess hall. "Gonna sleep through the next drill too? Maybe we should bring you a pillow." "She's dead weight," Finn muttered, not bothering to lower his voice. "She's gonna get us all washed out." Vance just watched her, a look of cold disgust on his face. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was on a mission. He would expose her as a fraud, the charity case he'd assumed she was from day one. The line had been drawn, not in the sand of the obstacle course, but in the unshakable certainty of his own prejudice. Aria felt the weight of their collective judgment, but her placid gray eyes revealed nothing. The escalation was complete. Now, something had to break. The CQC simulation, Kill House, was where tactics met terror. A maze of plywood rooms, narrow hallways, and blind corners designed to punish the slightest hesitation. The mission was a high-stakes hostage rescue. The squad's weapons were loaded with sim rounds, paint-filled pellets that wouldn't kill you, but hurt enough to make you wish they did. "All right," Vance briefed them at the door, his voice tight with adrenaline. "Rhino, you're on the ram. Hawk, you got my 6. Chun, rear security. Thorne," he paused, looking at her as if she were a faulty piece of gear. "Just try to stay with us." Jax hit the door with the force of a freight train. Wood splintered, and the squad poured through the breach into the disorienting darkness. They moved fast, clearing the first room in a flurry of commands and pounding boots. All of them except Aria. She stepped inside, her rifle at a low ready, and immediately peeled off into a darkened corner. As her squad pushed deeper into the building, she slid down the wall, brought her knees to her chest, and closed her eyes. The simulation descended into chaos. A role player popped up from behind a desk, his training rifle spitting blue paint. Vance went down first, a bright splash of color blooming on his chest plate as an alarm blared, marking him as a casualty. "Contact front," Finn yelled, but another hostile emerged from a side door, catching him in a burst across the shoulder. Another alarm, another casualty. Jax fought like a cornered animal, but he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. A third role player from an upstairs window took him down. In less than a minute, the core of the squad was combat ineffective. The mission was a catastrophic failure. And through it all, Aria Thorne sat in her corner, the Dreamwalker living up to her name while her team was systematically slaughtered. The final game over, siren wailed. Vance ripped off his helmet, his face a mask of pure fury. He stormed over to where Aria was just beginning to stir. "You did nothing," he screamed, jabbing a finger in her face. "You just sat there. You let us get cut to pieces. What is wrong with you?" This time, the instructor stepped in, his face grim. "Thor, my office. Now." In the cramped, windowless room, the ultimatum was delivered. "This is your official and final warning. You show me something in the final evaluation tomorrow, or you are on the first transport out of here. Am I understood?" "Crystal, Sergeant," Aria replied, her voice as calm as ever. But for the first time, a flicker of something unreadable passed through her pale gray eyes. The breaking point had been reached. The final evaluation was a full-scale assault on a mock village. It was the culmination of weeks of training, a scenario designed to test everything a soldier had. For Aria's squad, the air was thick with a tension that went beyond the mission. This was her last chance, and everyone knew it. "Let's just get through this," Vance said, his voice devoid of its usual arrogance. He looked at Aria with a mixture of pity and resentment. "Thorne, do whatever you want. Just stay out of the way." The whistle blew. The squad charged forward, and Aria Thorne, true to form, drifted towards the cover of a burned-out vehicle at the edge of the start point. She settled against a wheel, tucked her rifle in close, and appeared to go to sleep. It was a final, inexplicable act of self-sabotage. The base commander, watching from the observation tower, picked up his radio to officially mark her as failed. That's when a black SUV appeared. It moved with a silent, predatory grace, its tinted windows reflecting the desert sun. It wasn't a military vehicle. It belonged to a different world, one of shadows and secrets. It stopped near the observation tower, and the man who stepped out seemed to drain the sound from the entire training yard. Commander Stryker. He was a legend, a ghost whispered about in the highest echelons of special operations. He wore a crisp, unadorned uniform, but his presence was an undeniable force. He moved with the lethal calm of a man who had walked through hell and found it wanting. "Chief," Stryker said to the base commander, his voice quiet but carrying with absolute authority. "I'm here for Staff Sergeant Thorne." The chief was flustered. "Sir, with all due respect, she's just washed out of the program. Her performance has been—" "I've read the reports." Stryker cut him off, his eyes fixed on Aria's still form. "I'm not here to review your assessment. I'm here to conduct my own." He raised a small, encrypted radio to his lips. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice was a calm, precise instrument cutting through the noise of the exercise. A single, clear transmission. A catalyst. The world was about to change. "Thorne." Commander Stryker's voice cut through the comms, a blade of pure clarity. "Protocol Echo, activate." The effect was instantaneous and absolute. From the observation tower, they watched as Aria Thorne didn't just stand up, she uncoiled. One moment, she was a listless soldier slumped against a wreck. The next, she was a predator. The lethargy vanished, replaced by a terrifying focus. Her pale gray eyes, once distant, were now alight with a cold, analytical fire. She moved, not running, but flowing through the mock village like water, seeking the path of least resistance. Her rifle came up, a seamless extension of her will, tracking targets that hadn't even revealed themselves yet. The first role player, hidden in a second-story window, was neutralized with a controlled double tap before he could even shoulder his weapon. Vance and his squad, killed early in the simulation, could only lie on the ground and watch in stunned silence. This wasn't the Dreamwalker. This was something else entirely. She cleared the first building in 45 seconds. Her movements were a masterclass in tactical efficiency. No wasted steps, no hesitation. She didn't just enter rooms. She owned them, her situational awareness seeming almost precognitive. An ambush set by 3 hostiles in a narrow alleyway was dismantled in under 5 seconds. She engaged, neutralized, and moved on before the brass casings from her rifle had finished hitting the ground. In the observation tower, the instructors had stopped timing. They were simply witnessing. This wasn't training, it was a demonstration. Artistry of the most lethal kind. She reached the final objective, the building with the hostage, and didn't even pause. She processed the angles, the backstops, and the threat positions in a single glance. She breached the door, and in the space of a single heartbeat, 2 shots rang out. 2 hostiles down. Hostage secured. The mission accomplished siren blared across the silent village. Aria holstered her sidearm, her breathing perfectly even. In the debriefing room, the air was thick with disbelief. "What the hell was that?" the base chief demanded. Stryker looked at Aria, who was methodically field stripping her weapon. "That," he said, his voice low, "was the Echo protocol. A deep cover, psychological conditioning program. We embed our most elite operators in conventional units, their true capabilities locked away behind a verbal key. They're conditioned to suppress their combat responses to appear utterly average until they are activated." He looked at the chief. Staff Sergeant Thorne isn't just a soldier. She's one of the most effective intelligence and direct action assets this country has. And you were about to send her home. The revelation hung in the air, as devastating as any explosion. The barracks that night were as quiet as a tomb. The swagger and ridicule were gone, replaced by a palpable mixture of awe and fear. Aria Thorne was no longer the Dreamwalker. She was a ghost in their midst, a reminder of how little they truly knew. Vance approached her bunk as she was packing her duffel bag, his usual confidence completely shattered. "Thorne, look," he stammered. I didn't know. Aria looked up from her packing, her gray eyes calm and unjudging. You weren't supposed to, she said simply. The statement wasn't an absolution. It was a fact. It highlighted the unbridgeable chasm between his world and hers. But why? Vance asked, desperate to understand. Why go through all of that? The insults, the failure. Because the mission required it, she replied, and in those 5 words, he understood he would never truly comprehend the depths of her dedication. Commander Stryker left the next morning in the same black SUV. Before he departed, he had one last word with the base chief. She'll be reassigned, he said, to the instructor cadre. Her request. Instructor? The chief asked, confused. After seeing that, you're not putting her back in the field? Stryker's gaze grew distant. Because operators like her have already paid their dues in places you'll never see on a map. They've earned the right to teach the next generation what survival really costs, instead of having to pay that price again themselves. Aria Thorne finished her training cycle with quiet competence, her performance solid, but never again revealing the lethal specter that lay dormant within. On graduation day, she was just another soldier in the formation. But for a handful of men who had witnessed Protocol Echo, she would forever be a legend. A quiet professional who had reminded them that the most dangerous weapon is often the one you never see coming. The story of the soldier who slept through every drill became a cautionary tale at the Crucible, a whisper of the extraordinary capabilities that might be hidden behind the most ordinary faces. How many other sleepwalkers are out there, waiting for the right words to awaken the warrior within? The answer, like Aria Thorne herself, remains one of the nation's most closely guarded secrets. Have you ever completely misjudged someone, only to discover they were far more capable than you ever imagined? Do you think the Echo Protocol, which put Aria at risk of being dismissed, was a necessary safeguard or a dangerous gamble? And what would you do if you were in Vance's shoes after the truth was revealed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read everyone. Please comment with respect for everyone's opinions, as your insights help us shape the stories we tell next. If this story reminds you that true strength doesn't need to be loud, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of hidden warriors. Share this with anyone who has ever been underestimated. More stories about heroes hiding in plain sight are on your screen right now. Watch those next, and we'll see you in the next one.